The text illuminated my screen, a cold front in a heatwave of familial chaos. We need distance from you. Please stop contacting us completely. I stared at the glowing words, the silence in my tiny apartment echoing louder than any family feud. Instead of falling apart or begging for contact, I conjured a calm reply, unaware of the seed of chaos I'd just sown. Oh, they had no clue how expensive that moment would become for them. My name is Maeve Whitlock, the queen of problem-solving, carrying burdens like a stage performer juggling too many props. My 9-to-5 in payroll at a local medical facility felt as stable as they come. My apartment mirrored that order: soft lighting, an immaculately clean kitchen, and drawers filled with color-coded receipts. Nothing extravagant, but reliable. That reliability, however, was synonymous with financial sacrifice, especially in my family. My mother, Linda, loved her little platitudes about family support, delivered with a sigh that haunted the kitchen as she wiped down dishes. Dad, Robert, had a more straightforward approach, stern lectures on loyalty and duty accompanied by the unspoken expectation for me to handle every bill floating around. "I didn't raise you to nickel and dime blood," he'd say, voice tightening like a noose, hoping to reel me in for another round of financially bailing them out. Then there was Nora, my sister, a whirlwind of energy and drama always ready to command attention. 3 years my junior, she thrived on being the center of every event. "Banker girl," she would tease me, a playful jab that masked the reality of her tapping on my wallet whenever it suited her. Every time I mustered up the courage to deny her, the family choir would harmonize, "You know she can't do it alone," drowning out my protests as effortlessly as they deflected responsibility themselves. Our endless group chat was a lively circus: memes, photos, complaints until the money conversation would erupt like fireworks. Suddenly, voices morphed into a sharper chorus of guilt, reminding me of all the past sacrifices and rattling off reasons I shouldn't make things awkward. They didn't know the knots I tied each month to keep afloat, nor did they care to understand. My financial struggles were merely a humming background noise against their demands. Amidst this cacophony of chaos, the lone figure who never sought to exploit my kindness was my Uncle Grant. He owned a small moving service, rooted in sweat and sifting through people's lives. Always observing but never asking for assistance, he quietly respected my boundaries. It took me way too long to realize the significance of his simple presence and how pivotal it would become in my rebellion against the family expectation of constant sacrifice. In hindsight, I had grown comfortable in this seemingly normal role, a supporting character in a show where I funded the plot twists while everyone else played lead. But now, freedom glimmered at the horizon as I contemplated what life would look like without my family's incessant demands. Little did they know, I was ready to drop the weight they always handed me, and embark on my own adventure, sans the emotional baggage. In my family, I assumed the unofficial role of financial lifesaver, the one who always paid for emergencies and the shortfalls that turned into endless IOUs. I convinced myself it wasn't personal, but each time I opened my banking app, I could feel a knot tightening in my stomach. Watching my plans fade while theirs thrived was a painful exercise. The tipping point came with a text that hit me like a door slamming shut. It felt like the culmination of everything. Leading up to that fateful notification, the odd shifts and tiny stings in our interactions simmered below the surface. It all began with Nora swinging by my parents' house, flaunting a brand new coat with price tags still dangling. She casually mentioned a safer apartment across town, bypassing eye contact like it was a game. "You'll cover the deposit, right?" she chimed, as though she were casually ordering tacos. I mustered a firm, calm no, rehearsed many times in front of the mirror, and the air instantly thickened. My mother's grip on her dish tightened, while my father inhaled slowly, disappointment simmering. Nora smiled, unfazed, shooting her classic line, "Come on, banker girl, it's not that deep." Exiting early, I sat in my car, heater humming, baffled at how establishing a boundary had morphed into an act of rebellion. But the real kicker came 2 days later when my office phone rang and I picked it up with my professional tone, only to find my parents' landlord merrily confirming a deposit renewal I was blindsided by. As he rambled on about a late fee they hadn't mentioned, I felt heat creeping up my neck. My privacy had been invaded, as they'd shared my work email and details about me, assuming I was okay with them using my personal info like a handed-out party favor. How could my family, the ones I trusted, breach that line? I found myself questioning whether any semblance of privacy existed between us at all. That evening, I paid a visit to their apartment. The hallway smelled like cleaning supplies fighting the stench of last night's takeout. I plopped them on that sagging couch, the very one I'd bought for Nora, and decided it was time to vocalize all those suppressed feelings. I deserve to know what I'm paying for, I asserted. But instead of shock, I met icy glares. My mother looked ready to fight, while Dad grumbled about tone. Nora's laughter echoed from the hallway, sharpening the absurdity of the situation. The discussion was more casual cruelty than a confrontation, and I left before I could even finish my thought. The next day, my phone buzzed with a group chat notification that felt like a gut punch. "We need distance from you. Please stop contacting us completely." A strange sense of clarity settled over me, something within clicked into place like a well-timed puzzle piece. In those suspended moments after reading that message, time felt like it had slowed, stretching to help me absorb the weight of my family's choice. They didn't just want space, they chose exile, a clean separation. It wasn't a request but a decree, devoid of discussion and steeped in finality. The silence that enveloped me was jarring and echoed with an unmistakable finality that would change everything I thought I knew about family. Sitting on my bed, I was glued to my phone, staring at the message until the screen politely dimmed out. It wasn't anger bubbling up inside me, it was this icy calmness washing over me that felt oddly refreshing. So, if this was the distance they wanted, I figured I could give it to them in full. Little did I know, the universe had other plans. Just an hour later, my phone buzzed with an unexpected name, Uncle Grant. You know it's serious business when he calls. "Hey, I'm at your parents' place," he said, his tone steady as usual but tinged with an air of gravity. "They roped him in for a packing job?" "Packing what?" I asked, half expecting him to tell me they just needed help with the cookie jar. "Everything," Grant responded, and my heart sank harder than a lead balloon. Clothes, dishes, memories, all of it headed for the exit as my parents ghosted me in the most literal way possible. They weren't just hitting pause, they were out. My eyes closed in resignation. Of course, they were moving away, leaving me to wonder if I was a discarded bill they couldn't quite remember to pay. Grant's offer to return anything with my name on it didn't comfort me. It felt like he was merely handing me the leftovers of their chaos. Yet, standing in that empty room, watching my previous life slip away, I dug into my drawer of meticulously organized receipts, which I swore were for personal accounting but now felt like evidence. I spread them out like a lifeline, each color-coded slip signifying a paved road leading to my own devaluation. Housing in green, utilities in yellow, the blues for transportation, red for medical, and a slushy purple for all the miscellaneous expenses they seemed to forget. It was a vibrant but exhausting tapestry of my life and, suddenly, it hit me. This wasn't love, it was dependency disguised as family duty. And for the first time, that recognition didn't crush me, it lifted me. That night, Elias showed up. No dramatic knocking, that wasn't his style. He just tapped softly and let himself in because he understood gentleness was key. "They texted you," he stated, more observation than question. I slid my phone over to him. His face tightened but his eyes softened as he read through my family's hit list of goodbyes. "You don't deserve this," he said with an intensity that felt like a warm embrace. I sat on the floor with piles of receipts and simply exhaled, feeling lighter as if someone had finally unclipped the straps tightening around my chest. "I'm done," I declared. "Then let's pick one thing," Elias suggested, reaching for the stack of green housing receipts with the delicacy of flipping through a well-loved book. I handed it over, knowing we were diving into the deep end. The very next morning, I poured out my saga to Dr. Priya. She listened, nodded, and then delivered a golden nugget of wisdom. Maeve, ending a financial entanglement isn't abandonment, it's self-preservation. Those words hit me like a shot of espresso. It was what I'd needed to hear more than I realized. Strutting out of her office, I was armed with clarity and purpose. I knew my upcoming message wouldn't be about feelings, but facts, final, stone-cold facts. That night, I decided to silence my phone, flipping it face down and ignoring the pull it usually had on my life. But morning came with a twist. I flipped it over to find my group chat lit up like a Christmas tree, overflowing with concerned messages. Nora had kicked it off. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering?" Mom chimed in with her usual flair for melodrama. "You're being dramatic again." If they wanted distance, what was with the melodrama? I revisited the original message about needing space, feeling the sting again but holding on to my newfound clarity. I walked to my kitchen table and laid out the color-coded stacks of bills I'd organized from the night before. Each pile represented years of my unwavering contributions to the family: housing, utilities, medical, transportation subscriptions, you name it. I took meticulous photos for each category, feeling remarkably calm. My fingers, once shaky at the thought of confrontation, now moved with precision. After laying out the evidence of my silent support, I opened the family group chat. My message was a masterpiece of clear-cut text and cold efficiency. "I'm honoring your request for distance," it read, followed by a summary of the payments I'd been covering. I circled the end dates with an almost giddy anticipation, urging them to transfer everything into their names within 30 days. Click, click, click. Each photo sent felt like dropping a bomb in a crowded chat room. My heart raced as I added the finishing line, the one I knew would finally display my contribution like neon lights in Times Square. "Of course, I'll cancel my direct deposits first thing." Followed by a heart-stopping silence. I could picture their faces glued to their screens, processing the total I'd been covering all these years as panic set in a chaotic mix of fear and reality crashing into their cozy delusions. And there it was, the flood of frantic messages coming in. "Mom. Maeve. What is this supposed to mean? Dad, money is not the same as family." My Aunt Mara, ever the peacekeeper, chimed in, along with the family, each tapping away like their lives depended on it. My mom shot back, "We meant distance from your attitude, not from you." "Oh, how classic." I replied with cool indifference, reminding them of their own words. "I'm honoring it." Then came Dad, a veritable fountain of fury, typing a paragraph devoid of punctuation, a sure sign that things were heating up. "After everything we did for you growing up, this is the thanks we get," he raged. I resisted, shaking my head at the age-old guilt trip that had come in various flavors throughout the years. It was time for a new tactic. "I can't afford to move right now. What if I'm in danger?" was all I could think to throw back at their emotional blackmail. The silence that followed was precious. I could practically hear the cogs turning in their heads, then the familiar ring of incoming calls: Mom, Dad, Nora, each one lighting up my screen until I finally hit Do Not Disturb. They craved a reaction. But I was smart enough to keep mine locked up tight, refusing to give them the satisfaction of my emotional turmoil. An hour later, a surprise message appeared, not in the chaotic family chat but privately from Grant. "I'm dropping off a few boxes tonight. Stuff that belongs to you," he texted. My heart did a little jig as I pondered what treasures lay within. When he showed up that evening, his jacket dusty from hauling furniture, I felt nothing less than excitement as he set 3 boxes down in my doorway. He'd heard them say to not bother with anything that wasn't theirs, but he'd spotted my name, thank goodness for loyal friend. As I opened the boxes, nostalgia hit me like a freight train. There were unopened kitchen towels, a shiny blender still neatly packed, and a router they had never even installed. Each item was a reminder of my unwavering support for their lives. How satisfying it felt to reclaim these little pieces of me, the countless contributions displayed in tangible form. It was time to embrace my independence and move on. Family can be complicated, but I was ready to write my own story. As I stood there feeling the weight of my family's criticisms, disappointment washed over me. Grant, my impromptu cheerleader from behind the scenes, told me to stand strong and not let their drama ensnare me. Little did they know, I had done more for them than they ever acknowledged. The emotional knot in my chest tightened. Was this grief I felt? Not for what I was losing, but for seeing the truth without any blinders of familial obligation. Once Grant exited the chat, chaos erupted. Chad's fury exploded like confetti from a popper, but without the joviality. Mom wailed about Grant witnessing our not-so-private mess, while Dad lamented over his tarnished reputation. Nora, oh Nora, they crowned me the villain for pointing out the obvious. I didn't type a single response. Instead, I found solace in a glass of water, sipping slowly in the shattering aftermath, letting minutes drift away without acknowledgement of the electronic theatrics. Just when I thought the noise had faded, the tide turned again. The messages morphed from anger to pleading, like a soap opera on repeat. My phone buzzed with desperate cries of "Mom, please don't," and "Nora, you're ruining everything." I mulled it over and decided my only reply would be to draw a line in the sand, no more conversations about money. Silence reigned for a bit, then the family egg cracked wide open. "Why are you so cold?" The question hung in the air like an awkwardly misplaced Christmas ornament. I responded, "You told me not to reach out. I'm just following orders," and braced myself. That silent moment was pure bliss until the family chat flared up again at midnight, now featuring relatives who had clearly lost their minds. Aunt Mara chimed in, shocked and judgmental, while Cousin Blair's disapproval dripped through the screen. Fostering a sense of guilt, I let their drama slide past me. Instead, I crafted a document bursting with useful resources, budget templates, and contact numbers, all wrapped up with a little note about their capabilities. It felt oddly satisfying, and the silence that followed was deafening. When a final ultimatum from my mom appeared, "If you do this, you're dead to me," I absorbed it without flinching. I didn't even feel the sting. My fingers danced over my phone and typed, "I'm sorry you feel that way," before laying the device down. The dark corners of my apartment felt different. For the first time in ages, I found myself overwhelmed not with anxiety, but relief. Sure, the group chat morphed into a quiet void by morning, but that was an odd kind of peace. Sipping on my coffee at my tiny kitchen table, I felt a sense of normalcy reclaiming my life. With a click and a confirmation, I snipped away ties that bound me to their drama, password changes, termination of payments. It was liberating. Each action was like releasing a breath that clung to my lungs too long. I later shared my anxiety with Dr. Priya, feeling both lighter and nervous. She nodded understandingly, letting me know that peace can sometimes feel like an impending storm when chaos has been your longtime companion. Elias swooped in later, takeout in hand and solidarity in his eyes, grounding me amidst swirling emotions. His pride in me wasn't just patting on the back, it felt believable, genuine. My life didn't erupt into loudness, it blossomed clarity. No more phone checks while walking, and cooking brought no obligation. In the floaty quiet, I began to embrace the idea that love meant respect, and boundaries were akin to survival rather than cruelty. Watching my thoughts transform, I realized I'd likely not be the last to redefine love. Maybe sharing lived experiences could light up someone else's path.